Okay, so today we're going to talk about simplifying simplifying cube roots. So the first thing I want to go over with you guys is simplifying square roots. So in the try this here, I have defined what a perfect square is. So everyone should know that a perfect square comes from a number multiplied by itself. So it is the product of a number multiplied by itself. All right, so now I have list 5 perfect squares. So we have, obviously, 0 is a perfect square because 0 times 0 is 0. 1 is a perfect square. 1 times 1 is 1. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 is a perfect square. 9 is a perfect square because 3 times 3 is 9. 16 is a perfect square. 4 times 4 is 16. 25 is a perfect square. 5 times 5 is 25. 36 is a perfect square. 6 times 6 is 36, and so on. Okay, that just keeps going on and on and on forever. All right, so now let's talk about simplifying a square root. So notice on the outside here of the radical, the square root, I have a 2. So when I'm done simplifying, I have to make sure that I multiply my coefficient by 2. You want to find the largest perfect square that goes into 45 evenly. So that would be 9. 9 times 5 is 45. 9 is my perfect square. Bring down the 2. So the square root of 9 is 3. Bring down the square root of 5 because we didn't take the square root of 5. Bring down the 2. So I have 2 times 3 is 6. The square root of 5. All right, so that's simplifying a square root. So now let's talk about a cube root, a perfect cube. Okay, so a perfect cube comes from multiplying a number by itself 3 times. So let's put it as the product of a number multiplied 3 times. Okay, so now, since I'm multiplying something 3 times, I actually could have a negative perfect cube here. So I have list 7 perfect cubes. All right, so let's just talk about 0, right? 0 times 0 times 0 is 0. 0 is a perfect cube. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 1's a perfect cube. All right, so let's go to the next one. 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. Times 2 is 8. So 8 is a perfect cube. All right, so now we could also have negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. So that would be negative 8. All right, the next one would be 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. Times 3 is 27. So 27 is a perfect cube. So now do negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Times negative 3 is negative 27. So negative 27 is a perfect cube. All right, so now let's talk about 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Times 4 is 64. And then obviously negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4 is negative 64. 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. And then we get negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 is negative 125. All right, and then we have 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. And then negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6 is negative 216. And then we have 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. And negative 7 times negative 7 times negative 7 is negative 343. And let's see how many we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need one more because I wrote 7. 8 to the third power. So that's 8 times 8 times 8 is 512. So 512, and negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 is negative 512. All right, so now what does a cube root look like? So a cube root would look like this. The cube root, right, that little 3 here is in that check mark. That's signifying that you're looking for what number multiplied 3 times will give you the number that's underneath your radical, which is an 8. So the cube root of 8 is 2, because it's saying what number multiplied 3 times gives me 8. So the cube root of 27 is 3. The cube root of 64 is 4. The cube root of 125 is 5. The cube root of 216 is 6. The cube root of 343 is 7. And the cube root of 512 is 8. Now remember, I said that we can have negative perfect cubes. All right, so I want the cube root of negative 8. So what number multiplied 3 times will give me negative? That is actually negative 2. The cube root of negative 27 would be negative 3. The cube root of negative 64 is negative 4. The cube root of negative 125 is negative 5. The cube root of negative 216 is negative 6. The cube root of negative 343 is negative 7. And the cube root of negative 512 would be negative 8. And obviously, it just keeps going and going and going. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to simplify cube roots. Okay, just like we simplified the square roots, we're going to simplify cube roots. All right, so I'm just going to move all my information up. Okay, so just like square roots, cube roots, you're going to find the largest perfect cube that divides into the radicand. The radicand is the number that's underneath the radical, evenly. You're going to make a factor tree. You're going to take the cube root of your perfect cube, and then you're going to keep the radical and the radicand. So one of the most important things here is just to make sure that when you write your final answer that you are writing a cube root. Okay, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes. Everyone forgets to write that little 3 inside the check mark. All right, so let's take a look at what we have. We have the cube root of 16. So I want to find which perfect cube. Now, I don't have my perfect cubes in front of me because I had to move the screen up. So what you should do when you have to simplify a perfect cube is make a quick list down the side of your paper of your perfect cube. So 8, right? 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 3 to the third power is 27. We have 64, 125. And then we have 216. So let's stop right there. So which is the largest perfect cube that goes into 16? Well, that is 8. So when you write this, you write the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 2. So 8 times 2 gives me 16, and 8 is a perfect cube. Now, what is the cube root of 8? What number multiplied 3 times is 8? That is 2. So my answer is 2, the cube root of 2. All right, let's try this one over here, 108. So notice I have the 2 on the outside, so that's just going to follow down, and I'll multiply my coefficient at the end by 2. So which perfect cube, so you might want to pause the video right now, if you don't know off the top of your head, which perfect cube goes into 108? So let me give you guys a few seconds to figure that out. Okay, so that is 27. So it's the cube root of 27 times the cube root of 4. And bring down the 2 in front. So what is the cube root of 27? What number multiplied 3 times is 27? That is 3. Bring down the 2. Bring down the square root of 4, the cube root of 4, sorry. And now I'm going to multiply 2 times 3 is 6. So I have 6 the cube root of 4 is my answer. All right, let's try the other couple problems. Okay, so we have here negative 4/5, the cube root of 375. So try to find a perfect cube. I'll give you guys a few seconds to figure out which perfect cube goes into 175. All right, so that is 125 goes into 175 3 times. All right, bring down the negative 4/5. Right? It just, in the end, we'll just multiply by 4/5. The cube root of 125 is 5. Times negative 4/5. Bring down the cube root of 3. Now I will multiply negative 4/5 times 5, which is just negative 4. The cube root of 3. And that's my final answer. Okay, so let's take a look at 4. Now notice underneath the radical, I have that negative there. So find, I'm going to give you guys a few seconds, the largest perfect cube that goes into just 320. Okay, so hopefully everybody got 64. So I have the cube root of 64 times the cube root of 5. Now, 64 times 5 is positive 320. We need negative 320. So I want to give the negative to my 64. I want to try to get it out of my radical. Don't put it with the number that you can't take the cube root of it. So I have the cube root of negative 64 is negative 4. And then I have the cube root of 5. Okay, so that's it, and we'll practice some more tomorrow in class. Have a good night.